Hello, my name is Nikos Cagliarini. I work as a marketing and communication specialist for NGOs and as a photographer. I became interested in climate issues while I was studying for my master thesis in environmental economics, and I became a climate reality leader in 2018.
I'm Patryk Kubicek, physicist and researcher at Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research. I'm also a climate reality leader starting from 2018.
Hello, my name is Andrea Catalina Fajardo, and I'm a climate reality leader since 2018. Currently, I'm pursuing my PhD in climate change adaptation in the agricultural sector, using a case study in North Germany, where I'm based. I'm really passionate about all the topics related to climate change adaptation and mitigation in general, but also sustainability and social issues. Because I'm from Colombia and I'm very aware of all these kind of problems that we face every day related to social injustice, violence, and environmental pollution.
I'm Bruno. I'm a French industrial engineer working in the aerospace industry, and I'm also an entrepreneur specialized in social and environmental impact, and I'm a climate reality leader since 2018. Today, with some other climate reality leaders and my co-founders of the Climate Hub Hamburg, we would like to introduce you to the first deck that has been made available to the public by the Climate Reality Project that was funded in 2006 by the former United States Vice President Al Gore. But before going right into the questions and so on, I would like you to just look at this picture, because this is the first picture of the Earth fully illuminated that any of us ever saw. It was taken on the last of the Apollo mission, the 17th on December 7th in 1972. And it basically reminds us that we are all connected and that our actions have an impact on our planet. So today we're going to speak about three questions. Must we change? Can we change? And will we change? Because that's the last three questions that are remaining about the climate crisis. So first of all, must we change? Well, the scientific community all around the world has been telling us for a long time that yes, we must change. But now Mother Nature is also telling us. But if you look at the sky, it's not really as we think it is. It's not just this piece of blue. In reality, there is just a thin shell of atmosphere surrounding the planet, protecting the planet. And the sun shining over Earth's horizon through the two lowermost layers, as you can see on the picture of the atmosphere. We have the troposphere and the stratosphere. And what we're basically doing is we are putting 152 million tons of man-made global warming pollution into the thin shell of our atmosphere every day. And that pollution, especially carbon dioxide, so the CO2, is building up and it's trapping heat. So here's the basic science of global warming. This has been understood by scientists since 1,800 years, so 18th century, and energy from the sun comes to Earth in the form of light. That energy is absorbed by the Earth and warms it, and some of that energy is re-radiated from the Earth in the form of heat, and some of that outgoing heat is trapped by the atmosphere, which is a good thing because it has kept our planet at stable temperatures. And now, however, we've been thickening the atmosphere by filling it with heat-trapping pollution. So more heat energy is trapped, and it is warming our planet at an unprecedented rate. So there are many sources of human-caused global warming pollution, as you can see on the picture. But the main source and cause of the rising global temperatures we're seeing today is the burning of fossil fuels. And in fact, fossil fuels still provide more than 80% of the world's energy. Fossil fuel use and emissions have gone up dramatically since World War II. And in the last few years, there was a leveling off as the world adopted more and more clean energy solutions until another recent spike in global warming pollution. As a result of this pollution being trapped in the atmosphere, global temperature have risen dramatically, and 19 of the 20 hottest years ever measured with instruments have occurred since 2001. The hottest year of all was 2016. You can see, for example, in Germany, what happened in August 24, 2018, when we had a huge fire in Brandenburg, or also in Hamburg, where you can see here in August, where all the grass was completely burned. So there was no green grass anymore at this time. And maybe it was nice, of course, to enjoy the summer and so on. But as a consequence of this year's heat wave, German farmers have been granted 340 million euro in state aid, which helps them for now, but it's not a long-term solution because a heat wave, drought, and off-season frost or snows are already known to be drastically reducing the yield of crops, which is not only a financial problem, but a food security and health issue.
Climate change is more than a rise of the world average temperature only. Scientists are better and better in attributing observed weather anomalies to human-made climate change. For example, Western Europe experienced record-breaking temperatures in the summer 2019. Temperatures in many French regions exceeded 40 degrees Celsius. A rigorous analysis by climate scientists showed that such a heatwave has been made up to 100 times more likely due to human-caused global warming. To better understand the link between the global warming and more extreme weather, we have to look into the oceans. Oceans are big reservoirs of energy. They store around 90% of the extra heat trapped by greenhouse gases. And half of oceans' heat content increase occurred in less than 20 recent years. This is a very strong fingerprint of human influence on the climate system. Warmer ocean means more evaporation, which leads to more frequent and more intense hurricanes, cyclones, and typhoons. The same extra heat that evaporates more water from the ocean pulls moisture even more quickly from the soil, causing more droughts in many world's regions. Both rising temperatures and increasingly dry conditions contribute to longer, bigger, and more devastating wildfires. This trend is clearly visible in the western US. The typical number of large fires burning each year has more than tripled between the 1970s and the last decade. At the beginning of this year, we also witnessed dramatic wildfires in Australia, whose massive scale could be seen from the International Space Station. Climate change made these fires at least 30% more likely. Overall, the number of climate-related weather catastrophes is on the rise. We are being hit by climate extremes already now, but we shouldn't forget about the long-term impacts of the global warming, such as the sea level rise. Arctic is the fastest warming world's region. This affects Greenland's glaciers, which are melting increasingly fast. The water from melting ice flows then into the ocean, rising the global sea level. The same applies to Antarctica. Especially the western Antarctic ice sheet has been losing ice faster than expected. The sea level has already been rising, mostly due to thermal expansion of oceans. In cities like Miami, floodings during high tides are no more extraordinary. According to one study, Miami is the most endangered coastal city in terms of assets at risk in 2070, followed closely by Guangzhou and New York. In terms of population exposed to sea level rise, in 2070, the number one city is Kolkata, followed by Mumbai and Dhaka. We have not yet lost Greenland's or West Antarctic ice sheet. However, when it happens, it will be an irreversible loss. This is an example of a climate tipping point, which can be explained by analogy to Jenga game. Rising temperatures gradually destabilize the climate system. At some point, the accumulated warming is high enough to trigger a non-linear response, which leads to a collapse that can no longer be stopped. Because of the climate tipping points, we are at risk of irreversibly disrupting the climate system on which our livelihood and well-being depends. Even though we are not yet at this stage, probably, we already see social and ecological impacts of climate change.
The effects that the climate crisis has on our ecosystem also have major and catastrophic repercussions on our society. This is because our society depends on our ecosystem to function. And when our resources or living environments are disrupted, these causes tension and conflict. Think about people that suffer catastrophic weather events such as droughts or hurricanes and are forced to migrate. They become climate migrants or climate refugees. And besides the suffering of being displaced, they also become a source of monetary costs for the governments that welcome them, and also a source of tension. Another major issue is health. The Lancet Countdown on Health and Climate Change indicated that the climate crisis threatens to undermine the last 50 years of gains in public health. This is largely due to undernutrition. In fact, the already warmer climate has caused for now a 6% decline in the crop yields for rice and 10% decline for the yields in wheat. On top of that, the exposure to higher levels of carbon dioxide also decreases the nutrient content of these crops, which means that a lot of people around the world don't have enough to eat. Warmer temperatures also have an impact on the spreading of global diseases, of tropical diseases. Modern transportation and air travel, of course, play a part, but the potential range for many diseases expands as more regions become warmer and get a climate that's more similar to what we now consider an exclusively tropical climate. Besides that, exposure to air pollution, which comes largely from burning fossil fuels, has also been proven to cause lung and heart diseases. And in Europe alone, each year, over 20,000 people die prematurely due to exposure to air pollution. Taking a quick step back to the ecosystem, the climate crisis, along with other factors, such as the fact that humans are expanding their reach further and further into nature, is contributing to the worst extinction event since the dinosaurs disappeared 65 million years ago. And this is inevitably already impacting humans and will for centuries to come. All of the above shows that the climate crisis has a huge human and financial cost. Extreme weather events, migration, and worsening health conditions all generate costs in terms of money as well as human costs. In 2016, the first report on the economics of climate change pointed out that what we are now seeing is a market failure that has never seen before in the history of humankind. A market failure means that the biggest polluters are not the ones paying the cost of the consequences of the global warming that they're causing. Think about the migrants I mentioned before, or the people living in small islands in the Indian Ocean that are now disappearing under the sea level rise. So do we have to change? Well, of course we do.
Of course, in this discussion, there are many questions that we should ask ourselves. But in order to find solutions, it's easier if we ask ourselves one question at a time. And at this point, we could start by asking ourselves, can we change? And this question is actually not new. Has been asked many decades ago, and that's why this change has started already in many countries around our globe. That means that the potential solutions and technologies are already there. Of course, they're being developed. This is a process that has been, of course, ongoing as we speak. But many of the solutions have been already applied, and it could be already being applied in other latitudes in other countries and not only in the developed world. Meaning that the solutions are at hand, which is great news. So in order to give you some perspective of what I mean by this, I just want to show you two maps. And the left side is a reference year, 1965. And it means the percentage that the countries use as primary source from renewable energy sources. And the red side is from last year. So we can see in really quick overview that in the developed world has not had many changes. I mean, there have been already 50%, but it's really interesting in Asia and in Eastern European countries and also in Latin America, that has been an increase of the percentage of energy that is coming from renewable energy sources, which is also positive because that means that it's not only for rich countries that can apply these kind of technologies. That means that's also becoming cheap, where I'm going to come in another slide really soon. So of course, there's more consumption. It has to be also an increase in the generation of these energies. The most common ones are hydropower, wind, solar, and in our renewables in this category are normally biogas or biomass production, among others. But we can see that has been also stably increased in all the energy sources, which is also good, because that means that we also have not only the demand, but also the amount of energy that is required for this. But as I mean before, it's important also that the costs are getting has to be low enough so people can pay for them. And the product, of course, is a new technology, which means, of course, normally at the beginning the investment costs are really high, but on the time you can receive investment back. So we see in this graph, and we have these kind of two limits between the fossil fuels cost and normally the high end and the low end price range. And we can see from the different renewable energy sources are coming down to this low end price range, which is also good because it means that it's more competitive in the market, and it can also make a way that people can get more renewable energy sources because the prices are getting lower. So it's not an excuse that, okay, I will not get it because it's more expensive than normal fossil fuels energy sources, which is also really good in order to implement them. Of course, there are many types, and I'm just going to show you some examples. In Germany, it's really common, especially in northern parts. This is really windy to use wind energy, but of course they occupy a lot of space that could be used for agriculture or cattle. Then we have two main types that is called onshore and offshore. This is an example on offshore, and we can see also having some space with the ships, but also it's a lot of impacts on the environment, namely with birds. They really get confused and they can get killed from these windmills. And this is an example, like I said, offshore in Denmark, that it could be used in this example for the islands that are really nearby, that could be used for this energy source instead of fossil fuels, which is also really good. Of course, talking about solar energy in some areas that are really sunny, makes sense to concentrate to have this kind of plant that is called solar energy that's concentrated. So then don't you have a lot of small solar parks, but just a place that is really concentrated and then transformed to electrical energy that can be transferred for direct or indirect use. But of course, Germany is not the most sunny country, but it's expected, for example, that in Berlin, this is the picture I'm showing you now, that by 2050, they will want to use solar energy around 25% to consume in their city, which is really challenging because, like I said, the most energy that you can get from solar energy in these latitudes is in summer, and then you have to have some way to storage the energy for the other months that there's no much sun with batteries, but batteries also have an impact on the environment because of the materials they use. Of course, there has been a lot of development to use more clean elements to produce cleaner batteries, but of course it's a matter of, I said, this investment for new technologies, new materials, and then it's not as competitive yet. Of course, like I said, it's not only for developed countries, but there are a lot of ways to also that developing countries or countries like in Africa, Latin America, or other countries in Asia can get benefit of it. And there are many ways to do so. Maybe they don't have the money to pay, but maybe they can rent it or pay as they go to help them to develop some businesses that they need electricity and they don't have another way to get it, or to get communicated with the families or relatives or whatever. Also, they can charge the phones or computers, and they can also get some education from this. So of course, it's important, like I said, it's not only the generation, but also the storage capacity, because we get more and more people and more energy demand. And as we see in the chart, the projections to 2040 is like this capacity are going to increase. This is in gigawatts. So of course, if we compare as we are now, it's really ridiculous the amount that it has to be expected to storage the energy that we will need. And if we have to do this in order to make renewable energy also competitive in comparison to fossil fuels. It's also important, okay, we have different type of energy sources, but it's also about the balance. We have many, and like I said, there are countries like Germany that are not very sunny, and countries like where I come from that is sun every day, the whole year. So it's not a tailor-made, I mean, it has to be a tailor-made solution and not only copy-paste that what have worked before. And also it's not only about using one type of technology, but also if we can combine them in order to achieve the energy demand in a specific place. So this is a really cute image, but I wanted to show you actually an example of this. This is a pilot plant in Germany, and it's really challenging and really interesting because it's the combination of hydropower plus wind energy, as we can see here. So it's taking advantage of the environment. If it's really windy, if we can use water power, the water capacity to store energy, and then in order to minimize the impacts that each source of energy could produce in the environment. So it's something that it has to be developed still, but I think there are really good chances to achieve this. So coming back to the question after all this kind of input that I gave you, so we can change. I'm really optimistic about this. So I would say yes, but of course about right balance. What we need and how to achieve it is a really matter of not only producing energy per se, but also taking account about environmental impacts and also in the society. And yeah, but not only for our generation, but for future generations.
So to the question, can we change? The answer is definitely yes. The last question is, will we change? And about this final question here, too, there is exciting news. In December of 2015, at the Paris Climate Negotiation, every nation in the world agreed to phase down greenhouse gas pollution to net zero emissions as early in the second half of this century as possible. So climate action isn't just about what countries do. We'll all have to take the lead on climate. We're seeing corporations, states and provinces and cities commit to reducing emissions. We were much aware of the Friday for Future, of all the different also actions done by corporations, Microsoft, Amazon, Unilever, BlackRock, so all these huge corporations that are releasing statements at least that they want to do something more to fight the climate crisis. And we are also seeing marches and demonstrations and demands at the ballot box for the changes necessary to solve the crisis. So please join those who are speaking out, voting and making everyday choices to fight the climate crisis. Use your voice, use your vote and your choices in the marketplace and in your life. Speak truth to power, like your world depends on it, because actually our world depends on it. We need your help. We need everyone on board. If you want to learn more about the climate crisis and what you can do to help to solve it, please consider seeing the film An Inconvenient Sequel, Truth to Power, or reading the book of the same name, and visit the website of the Climate Reality Project. This presentation was done by the Climate Hub Hamburg, so by our whole team, where we have Andrea, myself, Estrella, Nico, Patrick, Jenny, and Ralph, and still getting new members. And we have a vision, and our vision is we believe in a world where human prosperity and nature preservation go hand in hand, and where climate action is a social norm. Our mission is to educate, engage, and empower people. You can see us during our free workshops, our free events. Also have a series of reportage about the coal industry, mainly about the city of Hamburg that is being completely erased by RVE, that want to use the land and is using the land to coal mine and destroy everything on its way. So we encourage you, we just released the latest episode, to go on our YouTube channel and watch the 3 episodes. That's very important to understand what the coal industry is doing, not only against the climate, also the people living there. If you want to know more about the Climate Hub, you have our website. You can also contact us on our different platforms, or by email, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or on Instagram. And we really hope to see you during our events, and that you will take an action for a greener and a more sustainable planet.